As the professor's ideas settled in my mind, I was having trouble denying their plausibility and rational soundness. The sheer force of the logic was becoming difficult to resist. In fact, looking back at this conversation, its entire direction seemed not to have gone the way that I was sure God had revealed to me it would. Nothing I said to the professor persuaded him. Every logical step we took in the conversation seemed to take me further and further away from God. Maybe I had been wrong about logic. Maybe I had been wrong about this conversation. Maybe I had been wrong that God had led me here. Maybe this entire conversation had been a huge mistake. I went to the next room and laid down on the couch with my hands over my face and prayed desperately, begging God to give me something, anything that could persuade the professor and justify the logical underpinnings of my belief. Nothing came. I was giving up on logic. I rushed back to my computer and replied to the professor's latest email. I've made a choice. If I have to give up on logic to serve God, then that is what I have to do. Every knee will bow, every tongue confess. I know you don't believe it, but I do. Within an hour, the professor replied back. You've made a choice? For Christ's sake, Chris. You're only 21 years old. You have no idea who you are or what you want to do with your life. I was backed against a wall, logically and emotionally. I had no idea what to do. So I called my parents. They could tell I was upset, but they couldn't tell what was wrong. I tried to reason the issue out with my dad. Dad, have you ever wondered if maybe the Bible was wrong? I mean, what would you say if someone told you they had evidence that it was, and they showed it to you? Well, I would tell them that's not what I believe, and if they didn't like it, that was their problem. And if they were going to tell me crap like that, I wouldn't talk to them anymore. But what if they were trying to help you? What if it was true? Jesus told us to live by faith, and that He would bring us salvation. He never said, I will give you the truth. He said the word truth with contempt, as if it wasn't important. But aside from God, truth was the most important thing in the world to me. Spreading truth is exactly what I thought God had wanted me to do with my life. I'd never expected truth and God to be in conflict. I'd never expected to have to choose between them. The dawning reality of this situation was emotionally crushing. I was sure that, as a lifelong Christian, my dad would have a core of faith underpinned in wisdom that could at least start to help me sort through these issues and get back to God. But instead, his answer was only more disconcerting. If anything, it confirmed to me what the professor predicted I would find if I brought the issues up to other Christians. At this point, I was fighting back tears. I talked to my mom. She asked me if I was okay. I said it was about God. Is everything okay between you and God? Yes, I feel closer to Him than ever. Strangely, I really did. What I didn't tell her was that the feeling was fluctuating. That one moment it felt like God was holding me warmly in the palm of His hand, and the next, it felt like He had never existed. It's kind of like, you know, when Jesus was being tempted before He was crucified, and He felt like the weight of the world was on His shoulders? What was that place called? What is that place called? I picked up a Bible and began to thumb through it while she was thinking. Oh, Gethsemane. Yeah, it's kind of like that. I didn't want to spread my panic to my parents. I had to take this on my own. I told my mom that I would be okay. I told my dad to keep praying for me. I sat in silence. It wasn't long before my mind broke free of my prohibition from using logic. I started to seriously consider it. What if God had never existed? It was like tearing my heart out to even consider it. Like being dropped into a vat of acid or turning into a vampire. I felt like I was losing the most important thing in my life. As the poison of these ideas coursed through my veins, I tried to resist it, but I couldn't. It just made too much sense. I didn't know it at the time, but I was beginning to enter a stage in my life where I simply couldn't believe in God anymore, no matter how hard I tried. I laid on my couch and prayed again, my hands over my eyes. But it didn't feel like anyone was listening anymore. The next morning when I woke up alone in my apartment, for the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. As I opened my apartment door, I felt a mysterium tremendum at the spacious and vacuous world that greeted me, like staring into a deep body of water that seemed to have no bottom. This once colorful world now seemed dark, colorless, and frightening, like something dead that had skin draped over it to imitate real life. This feeling of disconnect deepened as I walked onto the bus to go to class. I had once thought that when I looked into other people's eyes that I was seeing God through them. Now, those eyes just looked frightening and unknown. What controlled the world if there was no God? What protected me and connected me to other people? The professor once said that I would be like a turtle without a shell if I plunged into this headlong. Now I could see and feel that he was right. As the week passed, my simulacrum of God started to malfunction in my mind. Instead of feeling loving and wise, it felt dark, ominous, and bordering on schizophrenic. It pressed me to do bizarre and random things that just didn't make sense, like putting my backpack on a specific spot of the bench that I was sitting at. More than ever before, I was beginning to believe that this supposed guidance was just the random problem-solving part of my brain all along, trying to fit the guise of an omniscient creator. I tried to ignore this absurd, malfunctioning program my brain was running and carry on. In facing this possible reality, my life had become a living hell. Eventually, I emailed the professor about some of what I was going through. "This is normal," he replied. "Sometimes it takes time for the emotional part of the brain to catch up to the logical part of the brain.